Hi, everybody, and welcome to Cambridge Photography Week on Demand. Delighted to have Kritt Normaskul here with me today, and we're going to be talking about how Kritt has taken his hobby of photography, or one of his hobbies of photography, and ended up being featured in Time Out London on numerous occasions. So let's get on with it. How you doing, Kritt?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris. It's been great.
No, pleasure, mate. It's good to get you involved, and it's a bit of a late one, so I appreciate you taking the time out. So let's just start with tell us a bit about yourself, Kritt.
Yeah, absolutely. So, born and raised Londoner. By day, I work in a bank.
Yeah,
Um, so that takes most of my time. But
yeah,
on the side, I do have loads of other passions, and one of them naturally is photography. And so, yeah, with photography in hand, I go about London taking pictures of or anything that catches my eye, really, whether it's
mm,
architecture, because London's so rich with history.
yeah,
And another passion of mine is also food. So,
yeah,
photography and food seems to go very well hand in hand. And yeah, I've ended
yeah.
up, posting lots of my images on my personal account on my website.
Mm.
And yeah, I've been very, very fortunate that I've been picked up. Well, some of my images have been picked up from publications like Time Out, which was a thrill when you find out
Nice.
that out.
Oh, it's nice when your photography can get recognised like that. And Kritt, I can't have a conversation with you and not mention the fact that you are, very much into your running as well. You've
Thanks,
just
mate.
done how many marathons now? You,
So I've done 4 in total,
yeah,
3 of which happened this year.
nice,
And my most recent one took place just last week in Berlin, which
good
was
stuff.
an amazing experience, incredible city, a world major event as well, and
Mm.
the very one where Eliud Kipchoge set a new world record of 2 hours,
Yes, yeah,
1
yeah.
minute, and 9 seconds. So
Mm.
maybe cheaply, I could say I raced with Eliud, although he was a million miles ahead of me.
Well, no,
But,
you
a
can
truly
legitimately
incredible.
say that. Definitely, you were racing, in the same race with him.
That's
So,
right, yeah.
so you've got.
But
I mean, I can vouch for Berlin as well. Berlin's a great place to run, definitely. But
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
So you've got. I mean, you've got quite a lot going on. You've got your job. You've got your love of food. You're a bit of a foodie.
Yeah.
Also, you like going around London, taking photography, as well as being a runner. So,
Yeah.
so how how do you end up kind of getting featured? And I think this is one of your first ones, isn't it? When you were Krittstagram. How do
Yeah.
you end up getting featured in Time Out London? Because it's a very well established brand in London,
Yeah.
and it's been around for a long time. A lot of people read it. So how do you how did you get featured? What happened with the first time you got featured in Time Out? What happened? How did you manage it?
Yeah, well, it helps that I was what was once known as a small group created by Time Out as the Tastemakers.
Okay.
Um, it's not an exclusive club. People can apply to get in, and it ended up being quite a large group in the end. But nonetheless, it kind of like got my foot through the door, and the social media manager there kind of like began to know me a little bit, I suppose,
Okay.
just by name, but naturally because it's still a large group, you kind of have to stand out a little bit.
Mm.
Um, So part of it is very much a bit of networking. So you get your foot through the door, but then you kind of have to somehow get your name to the forefront of that particular person who, you know, chooses these images, who edits these pages and these particular sections. And so after, I suppose, a series of, meetups and socials and catch ups,
Mm.
and, spending a bit of time kind of like, actually being open and speaking to people as well, particularly those people who work at Time Out, you slowly get your name, out there to the people who really matters.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, it's not guaranteed that your images are actually going to be featured in Time Out, but they know then your name, so that's always a good
Yeah.
start. Um, just looking at this first picture where I took a shot of Guildhall, the interiors. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. That picture actually came about during a weekend known as Open Weekend.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
each weekend is an annual festival that takes place in London every year where buildings that are normally private are open to the public to visit for free.
Mm.
So you not just your Guildhall, but you look at your Palace of Westminster, you look at Big Ben. You actually go up to see the Bell. I'm not entirely sure if that's still the case now after its recent renovations, but just to give you a flavor of the kind of buildings that are finally open to the public when normally they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guildhall is certainly one of them. And I suppose because Open Weekend is such a huge festival, there are naturally a lot of interest around it. It's trending on social media. And because Time Out London is very much all about the best things in London, you know, it was very, very natural that they would cover the festival like that. And so, you know, it's all about, you know, when I've taken the picture, it was all about not just capturing, you know, a really, really good image that shows the beauty of it as well, but I suppose the reason why it got picked up by the guys at Time Out was because it was also trending at the time, using the right hashtags and the right caption to tell a story behind it as well, and also, you know, a quality picture. It doesn't have to be professional. I think this may have been taken on a phone, which again, is, you know, is another point I'll go on to later. But yeah, it was just a simple case of, you know, being ready, being curious, looking around you, and trying to find the best perspective, the best viewpoint that would illustrate or show or demonstrate the beauty of the building that you're in or wherever you're standing. And so, yeah, coupled with the fact that it was trending at the time, and I guess, you know, Time Out at the time was very much, you know, in search of content and images to put on their magazine to showcase exactly what had happened at Open Weekend London. I guess that was why my images came to the forefront of their mind, and it appeared in, I suppose, the next edition of Time Out the following week after. And so that's how it came about, and it still remains one of my favorite pictures as well. And it's all, you know, it came about simply because I was curious. I was marveling at this beautiful place. I had a camera in hand, and there was a moment where there wasn't so many people milling around in front of me, and it was almost like, you know, I had the place to myself, and it was quiet and beautiful, and it just really showed the true beautiful architecture of Guildhall then. And so, yeah, one of my favorites.
And you, I mean, there's a couple of things there as well from what you've said, is that, you know, you got involved in a trending event, you know, an event that was popular, and you knew that, you know, there would be a lot of eyes on it. You know, so there's that, and also your active use on social media. So it's, you know, not just the, you know, the shot, but it's also the fact you chose the right time and the right place, didn't you? Really?
That's absolutely right. And sometimes it would help, you know, if you go onto the, you know, the Instagram account of the actual organizers, I think it may be just at Open London or something along those lines. They'll also say, you know, or rather they'll specify exactly what the hashtag is to use. So, you know, if you use like the official hashtag that organizers themselves are using, you know, you're again more likely to, I suppose, gain more exposure because, well, it's vouched by the actual organizer. They created themselves, and it's likely that the fact that the organizers themselves, when it comes to looking at the content that's being created around the event that they've made, that's the hashtag they'll use first and foremost to use and search. Obviously, there'll be different variations like Open London 2018 or Open LDN Weekend. But if you use the official one that they actually created, in which I would guess, I can't exactly remember what it was in that year, but let's just say hashtag Open London, and they created it and they promoted it in their link, in the images that they've been using, then, you know, you stand a pretty good chance of perhaps, you know, catching the eye of the organizers as well as other publications who are seeking content around this major event happening.
Well, if they create it, they're going to be very interested in. All eyes will be on that hashtag, won't they? And
that's exactly,
you know, if they can then share it, then they're obviously you're going to benefit from the, you know, the reach that they have because of the promotion they're doing.
That's it.
So you mentioned earlier on about so kind of this beginning part when you were kind of, I suppose, developing that relationship with the person who was selecting photography for Time Out. You said something about tastemakers. So what was the beginning point? So were you actually working there, or were you?
No,
what got you into it in the first place?
it was ever so simple. So I think Time Out was trying something new, and they wanted a selection of Londoners who loved going out, um, love creating content around the things that they experience, the things that they see in London. And it was very much a simple case of simply applying, actually.
Okay.
They would ask you 5 questions, and this was all done online. I can't remember if it was Google Forms or something more
Yeah.
prehistoric, but it was very much, who you are, why would you be an excellent representative of London,
Mm.
what are your passions, what do you do? These kind of questions to really demonstrate, um, how passionate you are about London and the things that it offers.
Yeah, lovely.
I'm not entirely sure, how many applicants. I don't think anyone knows. Those are very much confidential kind of stuff. But I would
Mm.
imagine a publication the size of Time Out, and sending this kind of like application form open to the whole of the city, you'd imagine there'll be, a fair few people who apply to
Mm.
these things.
Well, you
I
went for it. I mean, you went for it in the first place, so that in itself is like one can sometimes think, oh well, don't think anyone would be. I don't think I'd have a chance of getting through, so I
Yeah,
won't bother doing it. Or why would someone be interested in my photos? But you went for it for one thing, that's
yeah,
for sure. Do
that's
you know?
right.
Do you know why they selected you? Did they give any kind of any feedback as to why they selected you?
No, they didn't. But I recall quite well, actually, the night I was writing it. I literally just, wrote from the heart. I didn't, draft anything. I didn't spend too much time on it. I just kind of poured my heart out into how much I love London, the things I've experienced, being a born and raised Londoner, how I want to be ambassador for London and all the
Lovely.
things that it offers. Um, and I could only guess that that passion really shined through.
Mm.
And I guess the lesson to be learned from that is, if you're really truly passionate about something, these things just come naturally and easily. I
Yeah.
think it just flows out of you. And I know I'm going slightly off topic, but it's the same with running. I can go on all day about running.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
I would imagine that at that time as well, when I was writing that application, I was, very relaxed in it. Applying, you had nothing to lose, and so you just gave it your best shot, and what will be
Mm.
will be. And
Mm.
once you're in that kind of state of mind, you're very relaxed, and you don't fear anything. You just,
No.
you're at your best stage where you're able to produce your best work. And I suppose when I wrote my answers to those applications, it was, yeah, it just simply allowed me to just really demonstrate just how passionate I am about the city
Mm.
that's, I was born in and raised in, and very lucky to call home.
Mm. Well, find your passion, and then it's you kind of can't fake that, can you? You can't fake
That's
the
it.
sincerity in the words you write, or the things you say, or the photos you show.
Yeah,
It's fantastic. Well,
yeah.
and that's then how many times were you featured in? Have you been featured in Time Out then, like roughly?
Roughly, I mean, I would say maybe up to 7 times,
Okay, yeah,
those images appearing on their permanent feed. But I
yeah,
do recall times where they've also shared some of my images on their stories.
yeah,
Whether
nice.
whether they save them as highlights, I'm not entirely sure.
Mm.
Um, but they have reached out to me in the past where, you know, they've known about my photography, and they, you know, because I was known as that photography guy, they also sometimes reach out to me and said, "Hey, there's an actual event happening later in the week or later in 2 weeks," and said, "Do you mind? Do you want to go down and cover it for us and take some snaps for us so we can share it
Lovely.
on our stories?" So one such example I can remember was when there was a Best in London Burger Championship, which is
Okay.
basically gathering the best burger food stalls in London from, from the likes of, let's say, Flatiron Square. What other food markets are there around in London? I can't remember. From Greenwich Market.
Leather Lane. There's all sorts, isn't there?
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah. From Borough Market, they gathered
Mm.
all the very, very best, and they basically fought it out to win the title of best burger in London.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
it was an event where they, you go in, you sample all their burgers on a slider, obviously, otherwise you'd be absolutely stuffed. You had a full size one,
Yeah.
and at the end, once people have sampled each burger from each stall, they have a token which they can then slot into a machine to vote which one were their favorites. And
Yeah,
so,
lovely.
yeah, going off a bit off topic now, but yes, I have been featured maybe 6-7 times. I can't quite
Yeah.
recall, admittedly, but I've also covered some of their stories as well, which is quite nice.
So I remember at the time, I remember at the time seeing some of your articles and actually you covering places you'd been to and events you'd covered. So, that's like, it's very much opened up London for you, isn't it? In terms of what you've been able to
Yeah,
do, which is, fantastic. I think at one point, we've known each other for a few years now. At one point, I think you were going out most nights, going to a London event or something.
certainly.
So
Yeah, and
it's,
it,
it's
yeah,
brilliant
yeah,
to be able
I
to
was
do
a
that.
busy boy, but
You were.
I was just passionate about it, and I fed off that energy. I didn't see it as work or anything. It's just
Mm,
something that I just love doing. I just love
mm,
discovering more about my city, and I suppose, yeah, it it just gave me more ample opportunity to be able to practice my craft,
mm,
because at every of these events, I would always bring a camera with me,
mm,
and I will just snap away, not just at the food, but also of the people and the vibe and the atmosphere, just to
mm.
get a whole view of the night and the event.
And was
Um,
this shot here in Piccadilly Circus? Was that your phone? Or was that your camera?
so this was my camera.
What do you use? What did you use at the time when you took this shot?
So I used my Sony A6000 mirrorless camera, which is an old camera now for all those people who are camera enthusiasts.
Mm,
Um, what I would say about that is, and what I was going to allude to earlier was the fact that you don't need to have the best gear. You don't need, the biggest DSLR or a mirrorless. A phone would do, because nowadays phones have come such a long way, particularly, smartphone photography. They're really, really good nowadays. It's
Well,
really
it's
more
for it's
about,
for it's for horses for courses, isn't it? Really, it's about having that camera to be able to take those
yeah,
instantaneous shots, but also having the camera to be able to take out for specific regions. As long as you're doing as long as you're doing your photography, then happy days, isn't it? It's a
yeah.
nice balance between the two kits.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to this image in Piccadilly Circus, where this massive bubble came just across me as I was taking a snap of Piccadilly Circus, the advertising boards. Yeah, I was using my mirrorless camera at the time. I had a wide angle lens, I think set at something like 12 millimeters, getting a bit techie now, but basically it was very, very wide.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that I've learned whilst practicing my craft is that you just have to be ready at any moment. Some of these magical
Mm.
moments happen in a fraction of a second, and you just have to
Yeah.
be kind of like vigilant and on your toes, and just be aware of your surroundings as you go about. You know,
Mm.
because
If you're
it
passionate
wasn't
about
like
it, you know.
it wasn't like I asked the person who was billowing these bubbles to, like, direct it in my direction in front
Yeah.
of the advertising board. He was just doing about his regular stuff, trying to entertain tourists and
Mm,
passerbys. I just happened to observe him for a bit, and then, as I was kind of walking around, I was looking up, looking down, all around me, just to kind of take in the atmosphere and vibe. And initially, I just wanted to take a picture of that, just Piccadilly Circus nightlife,
mm.
and I was just very, very incredibly lucky,
It's lovely.
at that perfect moment. This huge bubble just came straight into my line of sight,
Mm,
and it just added to the image even more.
mm,
So you could have, Piccadilly Circus in itself is buzzing, it's vibrant, it's got
yeah.
the lights emanating from the advertising board, and the people around it enjoying the nightlife. But the fact that this bubble just came out of nowhere just adds that extra touch as well, that there
Mm,
is, not just the people, not just the sound and sight, but all these other activities happening around it.
mm,
So, you know, part of this shot was luck, in the sense that this massive bubble just came out of nowhere right in front of
mm,
me. But also, you know, I had some sense to be able to put myself in the right position,
Yeah.
simply by being curious about the things that was happening around me, taking it all in, absorbing in, and trying to find the perfect spot to capture all that, basically.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying about, finding your passion. When I suppose if you're passionate about it, then you're going to be very alert, aren't you?
That's it.
And going to be in that mode to be able, that natural mode to be able to put
Yeah,
yourself in those positions.
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
And this is quite a contrast. So this is House of Commons, isn't it?
Yep. Again, it's very, very similar to what I was saying about Guildhall. It's one of those buildings that are often off limit, and already, when you capture something like the House of Commons, the old House of Commons, people are naturally curious to get an insight of what these buildings look like from the inside. When we always see it from the outside, we always wonder what it's like inside.
Yeah.
And again, I used a wide angle lens to just capture the whole beauty of this very intricate structure. There were many perspectives I could have taken it from, but in this particular shot, I remember quite vividly, I actually got as low as I could to the ground so I could also capture the floorings, the tiles.
Nice.
So I wasn't just putting myself right in the center of the room and then putting it in portrait mode and just snapping away. But again, I wanted to squeeze in as much detail into this image as I can. And so one of the tips that I learned along my photography journey is that not only do you kind of like move yourself physically to get into different positions, but move your camera as well. See if you can really get to really low to the ground, or get as high up as you can on a platform if you can, to capture things that are below you or things that are above you, or a bit of everything, I suppose.
Yeah,
So
nice.
yeah, it's all about, again, you only find these positions if you're constantly looking around in all the nooks and crannies of these places to capture as much as I can. So I got down on my knees here. I put my camera lens as close to the ground as possible, set the wide angle lens as wide as it can be, and I ended up with a shot where I was able to capture not just the ceiling, but also the floor and everything in between, including the statues and the murals on the side as well as the stained glass. So definitely, one of my favorite ones. And again, I was very lucky in a sense, and I do rely. We all rely on a bit of luck, right? I
Yeah.
was very lucky in this sense that there was no one around. I just had this whole hall to myself, and I suppose in a way I kind of captured the kind of like the power of this building. A lot of things have been decided for the country in this very, very building, and so
Yeah.
to be able to capture that emotion as well as the beauty of this building, you know, it's yeah, like I said, one of my favorites again.
And you put yourself in an uncomfortable position. You didn't have to, which is like literally get on your knees and do something.
Things for your
Some,
craft, yeah,
someone
yeah.
someone might have said, "Oh, can you not do that or something?" But you take the opportunity when you can, can't you?
That's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Take your opportunity when you can. Absolutely.
So we've gone through this one already. So and
Yeah,
then we've got St Paul. So St Paul, similar kind of style, I suppose, as to what we were talking about for the House of Commons.
yeah. That's exactly right. Same procedure. Set my camera at its widest, and yeah, just try to capture as much as I can on. Well, it's just a beautiful building, isn't it? With so
Yes,
much
gorgeous.
features.
Yeah.
So again, it was just applying the very same principles and skills that I did for the House of Commons. Um, so many beauty in it, and it's just all about, again, having that curiosity to find yourself the best spot as possible. Um, and then, yeah, once you find that spot, it's just a matter of being patient, making sure that, or not making sure, but rather waiting for that perfect opportunity where there is no one else around to kind of like distract your viewers' eyes to them. But it's very much, simple on its own and in all its glory,
Yeah.
essentially. So again, yeah, it's again another example of having that curiosity about you and just finding a unique perspective to showcase something that is familiar with many people who have visited St. Paul, which is a massive tourist attraction.
Yeah, God, yeah, it's iconic, isn't it? Really,
Yeah,
in the country, certainly in London for sure.
of course,
And
yeah.
is this your favorite? This is your favorite shot, isn't it? One of your
This
most
is my
popular shots.
favorite shot of all time,
Mm,
and for many reasons, not just the sentiments, because it's such a romantic thing. But this shot was taken during a festival known as the Winter Lights, which happens annually in London, typically in January and
yeah.
February. I can't remember, what this feature was called, but essentially, it's just a curtain of lights, I suppose. It's a curtain, but rather blacking things out. It's got these kind of like light bulbs that dangle through it, and you
Mm,
can simply just kind of like walk around through it, that kind of stuff. um yeah, it's one of my favorite images, not just because of the sentiments and the love being shown in it, but just how fleeting it was. And I was just so incredibly fortunate, that I was able to capture this very, very magical moment that
mm,
happened in literally just a fraction of a second. And that simply came about because, like I said, and as I was alluding to, in all my previous pictures, I was just simply ready. I was just
mm,
curious. I was just kind of marveling and in awe of this feature that was surrounding me. And because I had my camera at the ready, I was basically doing a 360 turn, just taking it all in. And
mm.
as I was coming to the end of my 360 circle, it literally fell on this couple
Oh,
who was
brilliant.
kind of embracing. They weren't obviously kissing at the time, but they were, they were hugging in a very loving way. And then, um I don't know if it was a good thing to have my camera, but my camera was at the ready, and I just thought, oh, that's lovely. And then at that perfect moment, they went in for a sweet kiss, and I captured that. I only simply wanted to capture them just like hugging basically,
Mm,
but then they went a bit further, and kissed, and yeah, it just worked out perfectly. And I was just, yeah, I tried to find this couple. I didn't know how to go about that,
yeah.
unfortunately. So they never saw it. No one ever reached out to me.
Oh.
Um, but I loved
Well,
it.
if anyone recognises them, then
Yeah,
just get in touch with Campkins, and we will introduce the two of you or the three
yes,
of you.
yeah, 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 yeah. Please,
I
absolutely.
think I
I'd
think there's
love to get
also
this photo to them.
I
Yeah,
think this goes back to also finding the right place as well, isn't it? Because
yeah,
and the right time, because this is a popular London event. So the fact you were there, amongst it, stays true to you being, getting involved in popular London, attractions and events, but also um, the popularity of that event means eyes are on it, which means it's more chance it's going to be shared on social, and there's more chance people are going to show interest in it. So the thing
yeah,
about finding the time and the place is has also contributed to the success of this shot.
yeah. 100%. And like you said, it is a hugely popular annual event, and
Mm,
people come down like in their droves to see and experience it.
mm,
I suppose one of the contributing factors to how I managed to get this picture as well was it was because I was one of the first few people to perhaps check it out myself, before anyone else. It was very early doors, when this festival opened
mm,
up. I think it was going to last. Oh, I can't remember entirely. Let's just say a month.
mm.
Um, I probably went on the first or second day when people haven't quite heard about it yet, or
Yeah.
it was. I perhaps went on a weekday and it was at its quietest, and so that's why I was able to capture just these two couples. If it was perhaps on a Saturday or a Sunday, there'll be people milling around. It'd be very,
Yeah.
very, very busy.
Yeah. True.
Um, so I guess one tip, I suppose, if you can, and I know this might be an obvious thing, but if you can, if you are going to go to a major event and cover it and take some pictures, you can do yourself a favor and go as soon as you can, when, well, before, it really starts to trend, not just
Mm.
online, but just everywhere, people talking about it,
Yeah.
so
True.
try and get there early doors when you basically have, um, the most freedom to,
Mm.
experience it yourself without having to bump into people and
Yeah.
dodge and weave. And it's also a good opportunity for you to take pictures, freely as well.
Yeah.
And if you were to, come on a busy day, say a weekend, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you won't necessarily have that opportunity because people really clock on about the festival and will really come to experience themselves, and it'll be much more difficult to, catch that perfect shot or to enjoy it freely.
Lovely. Well, Kritt, I think you got a whole load of other photos that that are on your Instagram account. There's KrittEats on Instagram, has the photography that we've talked about. Well, some of it actually was on your old account, wasn't it? But there's also a whole other load of photography around your food photography as well. So if anyone's interested to look at that stuff, then it'll be really good to take a look at that. The food shots that you've done as well. That's kind of, I suppose, began by you being involved in Time Out and then being asked to, go out and capture all of those different moments around London. But really appreciate you getting involved in this. We are, Kritt, if you are in Cambridge on Saturday, the 8th of October, we are going to have the Cambridge Photography Show at the Hilton in Cambridge on Downing Street. So anyone is interested, tickets are free for that. We do have workshops, and the price for those tickets for workshops are at £20. So if anyone's interested, then go to cambridgephotographyweek.com, get your tickets, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Cheers, Kritt. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me, Chris. Cheers.
My pleasure. Cheers.